I'm John Ochins, and welcome to Schooling Around. In this episode, we're going to begin our look at special education in Oxford schools. This is one of those areas where, unless you work in it or have a child involved in it, we really don't have a clue. When you look into it, you find that this phase of education is a different world in a lot of ways. One of those ways is that often different schools address different needs, not necessarily different grades. You find out that here in Michigan, school districts are responsible from not just kindergarten through high school, but birth to age 26 for special ed. You find that there are several categories of specialists involved, ranging from parapros to psychiatrists and psychologists. And you find that beyond the people issues and classroom issues, there are the money issues. These programs are never adequately funded. Today we're going to check in with Oxford's Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, Denise Sweet, to start our study of special education in Oxford. Stay tuned.
Hello, I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny. Together we want to invite you to our weekly show, Minutes by Minute.
Minutes by Minute is a show where we talk about what's going on with your local Oxford Addison commissions and councils and other local political groups, passing out legislation and ordinances that affect you. We believe that there is humor in politics and government, and you just have to look for it.
And usually we find it. For example, did you know that a local village has an ordinance that says if you have an acre of land, you're allowed up to 25 chickens, but no rooster?
That could be bad news for the chickens and bad news for the rooster.
Check out our weekly Minutes by Minutes, Monday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. and 10:30 p.m.
There is a warning, Minutes by Minute could be contagious.
As Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, Denise Sweet heads our special education program. It's a big job. She tells us a little about her background and how the program is set up. Denise, you've been with Oxford Schools for 5 years, is it now?
Correct.
Okay.
I've been here for 5 years. Prior to that, I was the Executive Director of Student Services in Grosse Pointe. Prior to that, I was the Director of Special Education in Lake Orion. And prior to that, I was a teacher consultant here in Oxford.
So what do you know about any of this stuff? You've been around.
Yes.
You've been there and you've done that. You've walked the walk. Okay. There's a lot of differences between special ed and the other part of the school programs. I mean, you know, it's easy for us to look at an elementary school and say, well, okay, over there you've got grades 1 through 5, and then the middle school grades 6 through 8, and then the high school grades 9 through 12. It's real easy for all of us to understand because we've grown up with that. I guess unless you have a child involved in special education, you probably don't know, or work in it, you probably don't know a heck of a lot about it. But enlighten us a little bit about just as far as how it's divided up within a district.
Okay.
How you lay things out as far as that goes,
Okay.
to start with.
So I believe like our foundation here in Oxford is that all students are general education students. Some of them just need specially designed instruction. So our basis is all students start in general education, and then we work up the continuum of special education services from there. So we have services, a full continuum. We have students that just need speech therapy. So they're in general education all day, and a speech therapist or an occupational therapist comes and gets them and works on specific skill development for whatever time frame they need, 30 minutes once a week.
So they attend regular classes
Right.
like a lot of the other kids?
So they're immersed totally in the general education curriculum and just get some additional support in speech or occupational or physical therapy.
Right.
Then as you kind of move up the ladder of support, we have students that receive resource room support. So they have been identified as a student with a disability, a mild disability, maybe in reading or math. And we have special education teachers that go into the general education setting and support students that way, co-teach. And we have that at all levels, elementary, middle school, and high school.
So, and those kids too then go through the regular classes, they're in regular classrooms with a little boost here and there based on what their issues are.
Correct. So they participate fully in the general education curriculum and get that boost in reading or math or writing, whatever their area, their weakness is. Then we have students that those special education teachers come and will pull out a small group of students, take them back to their special education classroom and deliver direct instruction. Maybe they're a little bit further behind in reading or math or writing, and we're going to work with a small group of students on specific goals to try to remediate those issues. From there, as you kind of continue up to more restrictive, we have self-contained categorical programs for students that have cognitive impairment, are autistic, and those students spend the majority of their day in special education, and then they're mainstreamed out into general ed for art, gym, music. They may go to lunch and recess with their peers. They may go to general education and get with a paraeducator for a reading group or a science experiment, something like that. But they spend the majority of their day in special education.
No Child Left Behind seems to be a hot topic of conversation in education these days. We'll talk about it in special ed after this. One of the hot button terms in education these days is No Child Left Behind. We spoke with Denise about that and mainstreaming special ed students. Does No Child Left Behind figure into any of this?
That's a law that governs how we provide education. That's a federal law. So in Michigan, we follow two different laws. We follow No Child Left Behind and IDEA, the Americans with Disability Act. And the majority of the states in the United States, that's the only law they follow. Michigan and a few other states then write their own governing laws that we have to work in conjunction with. So we have Michigan law and federal law. An example of that is the federal law says that we provide services for students 3 through 21. Michigan says their law says we provide services for students birth through 26. So here in Michigan, we follow what's more restrictive and provide services birth through 26, where Ohio, Texas, California, they only provide services 3 through 21. So
Either way, that's a lot of responsibility. Isn't
yes.
Yeah.
So here in Oxford, besides those categorical programs, we also have a program for babies, a birth to 3 program, and that's more of a home-based program. Our teachers, our therapists go out to the home and work with moms to help them work with their babies that are showing some delays. And then we also have an 18 to 26-year-old program that's housed at our high school, and that's for students who did not get a diploma, who have significant disabilities, and that program we work to help transition them out into the community. We may be volunteering at Fish, we have students that work at the mall, we have students that work at the car wash in Lake Orion, so we're trying to get those students out in the community.
So basically what we would think of as the preschool ages and the post-high school ages up to age 26, I believe you said, would be the off-campus type of help that we would be giving, where people actually go to the homes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's correct.
But now, and I'm sure we could talk for a long time about any of these programs.
Yes.
Because this is complicated stuff.
Yes.
But now as we look at our own school buildings and our day-to-day operation, our campuses, it's not as simple as looking at Oxford Elementary and knowing that you've got Oxford Elementary kids from grades 1 through 5 there. It's a little more complicated than that, isn't it? Because you have different things going on
Correct.
at different schools.
Correct. Not every building has the same programs. Every building has resource rooms because the majority of the students that we service have a mild disability. They're learning disabled, they have attention deficit, they're speech and language impaired. So we have resource rooms in every building.
In a moment, we'll find out just how these services are divided up. In special education, the different schools aren't necessarily grade specific. Denise explains further.
At Clear Lake, we have our program for cognitively impaired students. So we have a self-contained program, a teacher, 3 parapros, and about 9 students. Those students have significant impairments. They have speech and language impairments, cognitive impairments, emotional needs. That's at Clear Lake. At Leonard, we have our special ed preschool program. So we include students in the GSRP preschool. We work on goals and objectives, most on language development to try to get kids ready for kindergarten. At Lakeville, we have 2 classrooms for students on the autism spectrum disorder. So
you do some preschool.
yes, our preschool program, we currently have about 24 students. 12 come in the morning, 12 come in the afternoon. So it's a
okay.
half-day program.
Okay. And then middle school?
Middle school, we have resource rooms. We co-teach. We do direct instruction. And then we have 1 self-contained classroom for students that are cognitively impaired.
Okay, and the high school?
In the high school, we have, again, that whole continuum of co-teaching and direct instruction for learning disabled students. And we have 2 classrooms for cognitively impaired students. And then we also, our high school houses our 18 to 26-year-old program, which is called the LOFT program, which stands for Learning Opportunities for Tomorrow.
Okay, so you've got 18 to 26-year-olds coming into the school there for something?
Yes, we have, because we don't have, a building that is an extra building in Oxford. We don't have a closed elementary building that we would use for, our preschool programs or our post-high programs. When you look at other districts around in Oakland County, they kind of take all those classrooms, the birth to 3 programs and the 18 to 26-year-old programs, and house them together in maybe an old elementary school, a closed middle school. We don't have that here in Oxford. We don't have old buildings that we don't utilize. So our 18 to 26-year-old program is in our high school. However, they're on a different time. They come a little bit later and leave a little bit earlier, and they come in. They come in on their own bus. They don't ride the bus with the general education students or special education students. They don't take classes with the 9th through 12th graders. They're completely separate. They spend the majority of their day out in the community working, but that's where their home base is at the high school.
Denise goes on to tell about the extracurricular activities available for these kids. We also spoke about staffing.
Students have access to all the same after-school sports and activities as a general education student does. They have to, try out and meet those requirements. But for some of our students that are more significantly impaired, that would never be a part of a football team or a band, we have Special Olympics, which is for students 12 years old through 99 years old, And we have Special Olympics basketball, soccer, swimming, and track and field. So we have teachers that volunteer to coach those sports. And not last year, but the year before, our Special Olympic basketball team won the state championship.
Isn't that something?
Yep, in Rockford, Michigan. So, yeah.
Let's talk about the staff. You've got a lot of different roles to fill in special ed. First of all, well, I was just looking on the website and I printed some stuff out. The first one it lists is teacher consultants. Who are they? What do they do?
Okay, so teacher consultants consult with students and staff regarding a student's disability. So students that have teacher consultant services are very mildly impaired. They only need someone to keep track of them, make sure that general education teachers know the student has a disability, and providing some accommodations in those general education classrooms. They also play a key role in the evaluation of students. So they are part of an evaluation team. So when teachers say, I have concerns about a student, a general education student in my room, and we want to evaluate them for special education, the teacher consultant is the main player in conducting that evaluation and determining if the student has a disability. So we have elementary teacher consultants and secondary teacher consultant.
Okay. And then you have occupational therapists.
Yep. Our occupational therapists and physical therapists work under the guidance of a doctor. So you have to have a script from a physician that says, my physical impairment is adversely affecting my progress in general education. So there has to be an educational need to get those services within the school day. A student in a wheelchair that doesn't have the physical strength to wheel around the middle school. So a physical therapist would come in and help accommodate that environment, would work on strength training to help them access their environment. Occupational therapists, students have fine motor difficulties. They may not be able to write, or they may not be able to eat independently in the cafeteria. So physical therapy is more gross motor movement, and occupational therapy is that fine motor skills.
Right. I was going to ask about physical therapists next. I think you kind of covered that already. Well, social workers.
So social workers work on the social emotional aspect of a child. So students that need support because they have social emotional deficits. They can't make friends. They can't develop appropriate peer relations. So our social workers work with that type of student.
And then, of course, psychologists.
Our psychologists are part of our evaluation team. So they work closely with the teacher consultants to evaluate students for disabilities.
Right. And speech and language therapists.
The speech and language therapists operate like the occupational therapists and physical therapists. They're pulling kids out of class, working on either language skills or articulation. So you see a lot of young kindergarten, first grade students that get speech and language therapy, and then by second grade,
We'll talk about blended classrooms when we come back. As you might imagine, parents of our students can be concerned about all this, especially if it affects their kid. We asked Denise about the blended classroom situation. As you talk about the kids who are in the regular classes who are mildly impaired, who have to get pulled out from time to time, I'm sure you have to deal with issues of disruption in class at one time or another. complaining parents, from the good, listen to me, good kids. This isn't about good and bad. About that sort of thing, and how these programs hold those other programs back and things like that. It's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
It is. We try to work collaboratively with general education teachers, so special education teachers. I think scheduling is one of the most difficult parts of their job in September. I have a caseload of special education students. You don't want to be disruptive to general ed, so when can I pull kids out? When do I go in and help support students in the classroom? So those special education teachers and general education teachers, they're a team for that student. They're wrapping their, the OT, the PT, the speech therapist, whatever services that child needs, they kind of come in and wrap their arms around that entire classroom to provide support to the students that need those services.
Last summer, we learned that Oxford Schools would be taking back the Crossroads for Youth High School. It had been ours before, then changed to a charter school that was discontinued. I asked Denise about that situation.
So Crossroads for Youth is, it's called a Child Caring Institute, and the students there are placed through the court system. So for one of two reasons, either they're adjudicated, so they've done something bad, they've, when I look at it, it seems to me that they're truant, they're incorrigible, those types of issues that they've been in the court system, and the court system says, you're going to go and do the Crossroads for Youth program.
Right.
And so there's those students, and then there's students that are placed there through DHS, the Department of Human Services, and those are foster care children. There is no foster care family to take them. Wow. So they live at Crossroads for Youth, and Crossroads for Youth is their family. So because Crossroads for Youth is within the Oxford School District boundaries, we have a school there and we educate those students. So we currently have all the teachers are special education certified. We have a principal, a social worker, and a psychologist that run that facility. We have about 55 students currently.
You have some interesting dynamics there, don't you? On
Yes.
the one hand, you've got the foster kids who are there indefinitely for an extended period of time.
Correct.
But then you have those who are put there by the courts who are going to be there only for a briefer period of time.
They say that the students spend, the adjudicated students spend an average of 4 to 6 months there. So within that 4 to 6 month period, Oxford Schools is trying to provide the best education we can for a student who has some significant emotional, academic needs.
Next, the subject of money. Back in a moment. Hi, I'm John Ochins. We're talking to some of our senior neighbors at Independence Village of Waterstone in Oxford. Came up with this program, My Life, when a group of us were sitting around at the station talking about how we wished we would have asked our parents some questions. But unfortunately, by the time we thought of those questions, it was too late. So we invite you to join us for My Life on Oxford Community Television. Just as with any other program, there's a cost. We spoke with Denise Sweet about the financing of special ed. Let's talk about something we might not like to talk about, but that's the dollar sign side of things.
Okay.
School districts have to have money to pay their teachers and pay for their programs and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of different programs involved for the funding of different things, and I'm sure that's the case with special education too. Can you give us a perspective on some of the differences between special ed and the regular educational programs?
Okay, so in The district receives for every special education student the exact same dollar amount, that foundation allowance, as you receive for a general education student. It's about $7,200 per student. So regardless of being general ed or special ed, we get that foundation allowance. And then in addition to that, the state gives us a small percentage of dollars to educate special education students, and then the federal government, because we follow both state and federal laws, the federal government gives us a small percentage of money to educate special education students. It does not fully cover my special education budget, so then the rest of the dollars comes out of the general fund. So the general education fund is supplementing to balance my special education budget. And my budget comes first. I'm legally obligated to provide those services. So if I can't provide the services with the small amount of additional dollars I get from the state and federal government, the rest of it comes off the top of the general education budget.
Right.
So I try to be very frugal,
Well,
but
if-
still
But if
providing
you don't-
services.
But if you don't get your money, that can get everybody else in trouble.
Absolutely.
What
Yeah.
about the funding for the programs preschool and post-senior, post-12th grade?
So those programs I cannot use federal dollars for. Those programs have to be funded completely from state dollars because those are not federally mandated programs. So
Are those pretty well covered by that, or?
no, I do we do supplement from the general fund for my overall budget.
Okay.
We also asked Denise if she ruled the world, what she would make different.
A couple things. I think that I would like to see a better connection between public education and universities that are educating teachers. Sometimes there seems to be a gap when new teachers come in, when we hire new teachers. They don't fully understand like some of the highly qualified laws in terms of how what types of certifications teachers need, special education teachers need to be teachers in districts. So to me, there seems to be a gap between the universities and public education. And then, of course, funding. If you had more money, when I have teachers calling me saying, I need more computers in my classroom. I would love to have 6 iPads in my room. I need additional ParaPro support. I want this, $2,000 software program. I wish I had, an endless pot of money to, give teachers everything that they would like. But, we have to be very cautious of services and how we're spending our dollars.
Any particular thing that frustrates you more than anything else, though, in any of this?
Not really. I don't know.
Have to be a few things that satisfy you a lot about some
Oh,
of
yeah.
this stuff.
Yeah. I love when I go to the Special Olympic basketball games and when I go out and visit classrooms and you see the passion of the teachers. I love when I see general education students working with special education students. I love when I see a classroom of students and there's 5 or 6 or 10 special education students in there, and you or I don't know who they are because they look just like everybody else. And, those are the things that are satisfying to me.
Right.
We've been speaking with Oxford Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, Denise Sweet. In future episodes, we'll look into special education in Oxford in greater detail. We will be visiting our different schools, speaking with our teachers, and finding out how the special education challenge is going in our town. The more I look into this program, the more I appreciate the words of an anonymous educator. Every child is gifted. The gift is just unwrapped at different times. Thanks to Kyle Snage at the controls, Dan Zweiss at the editing desk, and you for watching. This is Oxford Community Television, keeping it local.